Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing active charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a professional wrestler, promoter, founder of Mad Dog Pro Wrestling. Been in the ring with the likes of Abdullah the Butcher, King Kong Bundy, the Bushwhackers, and so many others. I'm pleased to welcome the one, the only, Andy Ellison to the show. Welcome, Andy, to Wrestling with Heart.
Well, thank you very much, Stanley. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Now let's talk about your childhood and upbringing. Where are you from?
From Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and grew up as a wrestling fan, but also playing hockey as well. So at the time, I was kind of torn between both of them. Hockey, wrestling, didn't know who I wanted to be. Was it Guy Lafleur or Dino Bravo, who was a huge legend here in Montreal as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're around and surrounded by all these different sports, and those are great sports to be watching and participating in, both as a fan and as a competitor. Let's talk about what made you decide to enter the wrestling business, and you mentioned Dino Bravo. Was he one of your favorites growing up?
He was my favorite growing up. I was a huge fan of Dino Bravo. He was a legend here in Montreal before the time he spent in the WWF. I mean, of course, he was in the WWF in the 70s as well, but nothing like when he went there in the late 80s, early 90s. In Montreal, he was a huge fan favorite, a babyface, loved by everyone, as popular as any of the top hockey players here in Montreal and here in Canada as well.
Wow, that's so amazing. That huge of a star, and look at the impact he made on you, wanting to get into the business. What was it about, like, his style that made you go, wow, man, if he could do that, I could do that? Absolutely.
He was someone who captivated me as a fan, as a child, as a kid growing up. The whole idea, the physique, the personality, the fans loved him. He kind of had a little bit of everything, and that was something that drew me to him. And of course, as a kid, I was captivated by the whole idea of it from watching it on TV. And then later, as I grew up a little bit, I used to attend the TV tapings here in Montreal, because at the time there was a man by the name of George Cannon, and he used to operate what was called Superstars of Wrestling, which was the predecessor to the WWF's TV program, Superstars of Wrestling. In fact, he originated it. And the TV tapings took place here in Montreal. It was the old style of TV wrestling in the studios here at a station called CFCF. And once a month on Sunday afternoons, I would be there watching all these guys I saw growing up and I would see on TV. I got to see them live. And then, of course, we had a huge territory here in Montreal, owned and ran by Gino Brito, was one of the partners, Andre the Giant, and Frank Valois, who was his manager. Later on, ownership changed hands. I won't go into a whole history lesson on that, of course, but just to let you know, all the top stars came through Montreal. It was a huge territory. You're from Tennessee, so you could compare it to what took place in Tennessee with the Jarretts and Lawlers throughout all the years. And here in Montreal, we had much of the same throughout the whole territory, wrestling every night of the week. Monday nights here was huge in Montreal at the Paul Sauvé Arena. And guys, the local guys, Dino Bravo, Rick Martel, they were on top. We had King Tonga, who most other people will remember as Ming or Haku, the Road Warriors, the Long Riders, Blackjack Mulligan, Andre the Giant, of course, Big John Studd. They used to battle it out before the days when they went to the WWF. We had working arrangements here with the WWF, and then later on when Andre the Giant got out of the business here in Montreal, we had partnerships here with Vern Gagne in the AWA. So we got to see a lot of their stars. So I was very lucky. I got to see all the top stars around the world in wrestling here in Montreal.
So fascinating because you see, there's a variety of different promotions and so many different wrestlers that come through that area, both in Montreal as well as in the United States, because you see a plethora of diversity. You see so many people come through Canada and America, and just the growth of both countries. I mean, just the amount of people that came through that area. It's so fascinating.
And there's more that I just off the top of my head. Of course, you mentioned Abdullah the Butcher. He was a big name here. The Ledukes, Joe Leduc, Paul Leduc, Tom Zink, when he was very young, started here. The great Samu from the Samoan SWAT team and Head Shrinkers. He was just a teenager here in Montreal, but he got his start, and he made a big name for himself here as well.
When you're going to these shows, talk about the crowds and the energy level, because there's nothing like going to a wrestling show. And for you, did you have a particular favorite match that you can recall as a fan?
Yeah, because I used to watch it on TV. So what drew me to go see it live, of course, now I couldn't go see it most Monday nights here in Montreal because I was a kid in school and I wasn't allowed to go out to go see wrestling on Monday nights, school nights. So the first time I ever went to a huge, big arena house show was over a Christmas break. And I remember it distinctly because they were promoting a big match between Dino Bravo and Abdullah the Butcher. And the way they did it was they set it up by showing a match that took place in Japan. And this was a return match, and it was going to happen in Montreal. And, of course, every other city around the loop, but we didn't know that. But at the time, it was huge. And when I saw that on TV, I said right away, that's it. I've got to go see this live. And that's the whole lure of professional wrestling, the mystique that captivates you and captures you and draws you in. And I remember that match vividly. A huge crowd packed in the arena, which and Abdullah the Butcher taking the referee's head into the guardrail and him being carried out in a stretcher, and it was just unbelievable.
And it's always about the suspense of disbelief whenever you see somebody getting hurt. And, as we know, wrestling is predetermined, so you just don't know if it's a work or they're actually hurt. So you have to. Yeah.
Especially for an 11-year-old boy. And this was back when kayfabe was it meant something. And before the days when Vince McMahon and it all, just got thrown to the side. But yeah, especially for a kid my age to say, I saw the referee get carried out in a stretcher out of the building. It must be real.
Yeah, it's that suspense of disbelief. And eventually you decided you want to go into the business. You want to start training. Talk to me about that moment when you knew I want to be a wrestler.
Well, it happened when I was still a teenager. It happened when I was probably about 15 years old. I remember attending a show at the Montreal Forum, telling my friend, we're going to do it together. And he said, oh, yeah, sure. But I was serious. He wasn't serious about it. And I continued on. And a few years later, I was 18. But the problem was here in Montreal, everything dried up. The territory had closed down. The office closed down. And there was nowhere to really learn how to become a professional wrestling. And at least as far as I was concerned. And another one of my close friends and I, we wanted to do it. So we looked at ways to do it. And we just really didn't know anybody in the business to be able to do that. I mean, back when the wrestling territory was open, they used to put information in the program books about becoming a wrestler and attending their school. But that was gone. That was gone. So it was interesting enough. We said, who can we call? We don't know anybody. And thought about it. I said, you know what? I remembered the name of a ring announcer who was involved with the Superstars of Wrestling TV tapings. I said, let's look in the phone book and just try to find him. And lo and behold, we went through a number of names matching his over and over, asking for him. And of course, no, it wasn't the right number. We'd call the next one down the list until we finally got him. His name was Dave Singer. He's no longer alive, but he helped and he was instrumental in getting me trained at a place called Loisirs Saint-Jean-Baptiste. And this is a very well-known center in Montreal where years prior, all the big names that went through Montreal and went on past Montreal got their start there. People like Pat Patterson wrestled there. Dino Bravo, for instance. And it was run by a man named Pat Girard, who was a big name in England. He didn't really do much here in North America, but he was a big name there. And helping him out was another former wrestler, Johnny War Eagle, who teamed up with Billy Two Rivers here. So that's really how I got my start. It was a small place, but it was good for training and it was good for experience. And what you did after that was really up to you.
And you're able to take the knowledge that you learned from your trainers and to come up with the routine and repertoire that you were able to put together something. Talk to me about pieces of advice that you got from your trainers that still stick with you today. Any pieces of advice that you learned during your time in wrestling school?
Well, it's really the old school mentality of listen to what the old pros are telling you. And those guys were still around because there was training there, but they also put on matches once a week out of the same building, which was great for me. And I got a lot of training, and a lot of the guys who would wrestle there on the weekends were some of the underneath guys I would see on TV. So I got a lot of help from people like that. There were guys who you'd probably never heard of before, but they were good veterans who were able to teach me, don't say anything until they say something to you, and be respectful. Someone asks you to do something, you do it. And I find that's lacking today in wrestling. There's a certain etiquette missing and a certain way of doing things that's missing that I have seen in independence. And it's too bad because all those old pros are no longer around to teach that. And it's kind of, I'm not going to say the blind leading the blind, but in many ways, there's certain etiquette and rituals of the business that is no longer present.
Is that something that you're carrying over today at Mad Dog Pro?
Yes, it is. I try because it's based on old school wrestling, and I use the name Mad Dog Pro Wrestling for a couple of reasons. Because number one, I want to honor the legacy of a great name in professional wrestling, Mad Dog Vachon, who was from Montreal as well, represented Canada in the Olympics and known throughout the world, but also to represent a style of wrestling that I think is, I'm not going to say on the decline, but it's missing today. So those are the reasons behind it. I'm close to the family, and I wanted to do this for those reasons.
Now, when you're training, it is intense. The work that you're putting in, it's very hard and demanding, and a lot of risks are involved. You are really striving to be at the top of your game. So talk to me about drills that you were put through, any kind of memorable experiences you want to share about your time training to become a professional wrestler.
Well, a lot of conditioning, of course, a lot of taking bumps on wooden gym floors. The ring I trained in and used didn't have any suspension at all to it. It was an old boxing ring. I was told at the time it's an old ring from Madison Square Garden, and it must be really, really old because this thing was really heavy and wasn't the easiest to work in. But for me, I didn't know any better. This is the only thing I knew at the time. So I was just happy to be in a ring.
Yeah, I mean, you're having to really tell your body to move at a certain pace. You really have to train your body to
Right.
get conditioned at a certain pace.
Right. And you think you're moving at a certain pace in the ring. And then I remember getting advice from an old pro, Sailor White. I don't know if you know the name Sailor White. Sailor White was Moondog King in the WWF Tag Team Champions as one of the original Moondogs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started out, afterwards he says, slow down in there. Slow down, because when you're young and you're just starting out, you think you're going at a certain pace when maybe you're not. So, yeah.
It's that discipline. You have to, it's like a muscle memory. You have to condition your body and move to where you're able to reach that goal, to do those dives and to do those kicks and to do those slams. You have to.
Yeah, but more importantly, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
It's okay.
It's not as much about the moves you're doing, as much as reading the crowd, because less can be more. A punch should mean something, right? You don't necessarily have to do a 360 off the top rope through a table to get that reaction, or do it 5 times in a match or something similar to that. And I find that comes with experience. That comes with a certain training that I received, that we talked a little bit before about the differences between then and now, and that's a big difference.
Well, so it's about psychology, why you're doing the moves, why you're doing it a certain way, so that you get the crowd going ooh and ah, and it's investment.
Right? Right, your finish has to mean something. If you've kind of done 5 or 6 finishes before that, what happens for the real finish? You want that big.
You want that pop so that the crowd knows this guy or this girl is about to hit their move. 1, 2, kick out.
Sure.
1, 2, done.
Right.
So you get your training in. Talk to me about your first few matches in the business. Nervous, scared, happy, confident?
Pretty nervous. I mean, the first match was against my buddy, my close friend, and we kind of had something worked out, but we had zero experience doing any matches. And I remember saying, okay, if I get lost or I'm just going to grab a headlock, but it probably was pretty rough, but the feedback I got was, well, that was pretty good for a first match. And later on, I got to work with all the other guys. I remember the second match, I got a lot of help at the time. There was a guy from Montreal, Joe Milano, who helped me out there as well. Nick Raponi were guys, no one would have heard of them, but they had talent and they knew the business. And it was guys like that at St. Jean-Baptiste that helped me out a lot.
Anything that he said to you that still sticks with you now?
Go home. No, but it's just, it was nothing in particular, but just the weekly advice, the weekly feedback that helped all along the way.
It's good to have people that have been around for so long that are helping the next generation. And it's just like what you're doing now, because it's that wealth of knowledge that you're spreading that's going to help you and future stars to become successful in the wrestling business.
Yeah, it's about, you have to show initiative. No matter how well you're trained, or nobody's going to come knocking on your door unless you go out and make things happen for yourself. And I can speak for myself. I did the same thing, because I remember being in the business maybe a year or so and seeing a commercial or seeing a segment on the news out of one of the U.S. border stations, how wrestling was coming to Burlington, Vermont. And they did a whole segment on it, and Abdullah the Butcher would be there, and Action Demolition, and a whole bunch of names at the time, Bam Bam Bigelow, and the original Sheik, believe it or not. So I said, okay, it's a 2-hour drive. I'm just going to bring my bag and show up. Because as you know, in wrestling, there's always someone who doesn't show up. So I drove to Burlington, Vermont with my bag. I brought a newspaper article of myself from a local newspaper, knocked on the back door to the building. There was security, police there. I said, I had my bag. I said, I'm a wrestler. I'm here for the show. The promoter kind of opened the door a little bit. I said, hi. I had maybe 10, 15 seconds to make a pitch. And he's kind of looking at me. And another wrestler was behind him at the time. He said, come on, let him in. He's one of the boys. So I got into the building, and as a result, ended up working on the card. Someone had not shown up, right? And there was a very young Rob Van Dam there, going by his own name at that point. Yellow trunks, long mullet haircut versus Sabu that night. And I remember just the aura of the original Sheik, who I'd never met, Abdullah the Butcher. I'd never met, just remember him as a kid, and remember him from the Paul Sylvia Arena when I used to throw pennies at the ring and trying to hit him. But I never told him that. In fact, I spoke to him just a couple of days ago, and an aura. So I guess the message I'm saying is you have to make things happen. You have to take the initiative to do things. If you're a wrestler, if you're a promoter, if you're in any way involved in this business, you have to do it yourself. If you have an idea, if you have something, don't just sit on it. The only way to make it happen is to go out and try to do it.
It's all about preparation and determination.
Persistence overcomes resistance.
That's right. Now, you had a stint in the WWF, WWE as well?
Well, I had a couple of matches at the time of the infamous Survivor Series in Montreal. I was there that night for the Montreal Screw Job.
You were in the audience. You were there.
I was back. I was behind the scenes.
Wow.
Behind the scenes, I was right next to Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart when they were discussing their match in a hallway. Walked by. But ironically enough, I left before the match because there were some rumblings going on with the boys, and I was one of them was staying with me at the time at my place, and we were talking. We said, I don't think anything's really going to happen here. I think this is all just people blowing things up and talking about something, but I bet nothing's going to happen. We were hungry. We said, let's go and eat. So we went, and then we showed up the next day in Ottawa, which was Monday Night Raw, because I was booked for that night. And lo and behold, no Mick Foley. We heard about the whole thing that happened. And, of course, so yes, I did have some matches. I wrestled the following night as well. But it was a couple of years later when I ran into Pat Patterson in Montreal, and I pitched him an idea. I said, I have something for you that the WWF has never done before. And I gave him the idea. And at first he was kind of a bit skeptical because the idea was that I was going to be an Orthodox Jewish wrestler from Israel, because I really am. I'm a Jewish wrestler and I can speak Hebrew. And I said, you've never done this before? He says, well, we've Barry Horowitz. I said, yeah, you did, but he wasn't really presented that way until you put the star on his trunks for some color. And, I get it, but I think you need something where you introduce someone new for this type of angle and gimmick. So it means more. It really has a bigger meaning. And he said, but you could never be a heel. All the TV station owners are Jewish. They would never go for it. I said, I don't want to be a heel. I could be a babyface, and we could do something that's never been done before. We can have Jewish wrestler versus Arab wrestler, and we could run with this and go until finally we do another thing that's never been done before throughout over 5,800 years or so on, where we finally make peace and shake hands and unite and make peace, which has never been able, all the top countries in the world, the United States has never been able to negotiate any type of settlement and peace agreement. I said, but you could do that. And we team up in the end. So there were a lot of different scenarios that I pitched to him. He says, let me talk to Vince and I will get back to you. Okay. So he did. And I got a call from Pat Patterson and he said, we'd like to bring you in to Connecticut to meet with Vince and they want to see you. I went down for their tryouts. At the time, they were held in Connecticut at their offices, at their warehouse. And, you'd run through some drills and you'd run through some training and you do promos as well, where they give you 2 promos to do, a 30-second and a 60-second. And they just tell you, here's what the scenario is, go. They count you down with 15 seconds. They tell you then 10 and they count down. I hit the post. I was right on. During the training, though, I got hurt. Someone landed on my arm from the top rope and busted my arm up. And I had to get it checked out, and I was told I'd be out for a while. So when I came back to the facility, I was told, don't worry, we liked what we saw. We'll bring you back or we'll have a little something for you. So, but in the end, nothing ever came of it. And that was it.
That's hard to hear. You're working so diligently to work for the top wrestling company in the world, and unfortunately, an injury just threw a wrench into those plans.
Yeah, because, it's hard. It's hard. It is hard. Yeah, for sure. It is hard to accept that.
And it's, you have to really find a way to overcome and get past all that adversity, because injuries take time to heal up and you have to find a way to really figure out an angle to move to the next step. And you did with starting up Mad Dog Pro Wrestling. Let's talk about how you decided to start up the school, and talk to me about, because you've done so much charity work and been able to partner up with so many different organizations. What made you want to get involved with starting up your own school?
Well, it's actually not a school, but I put on actual events, live events, under the name Mad Dog Pro Wrestling. So this was something fairly recent where I'm calling it Mad Dog Pro Wrestling. I promoted wrestling events for many years, but really as spot shows. Here and there, local organizations would get involved. I'd raise money for them. But the idea came where I wanted to do this on a more regular basis. I wanted to attach a name to it that meant something. I used to use the name World All-Star Wrestling, but I felt it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And in using the name Mad Dog Pro Wrestling, it means something, and it also honors a legend. So my idea was not just to put on wrestling shows, because throughout my travels, whenever I would talk about wrestling to people, it would always bring up memories for them. They would always talk to me not so much about the wrestling, but about the memories that when they were a kid, they would tell me, oh, I used to watch wrestling with my brother or my sister or my uncle or my aunt or my grandparent. And we used to go to the matches. And I realized that I had something here. I realized that this was something more than just wrestling. It was about memories and creating a bond amongst people. So I wanted to use that and use that social aspect to it and the community aspect to it by putting on wrestling. Wrestling was actually just the vehicle for which I'm able to reach people and create memories for them, much like the memories I had growing up, where I can talk to you about all these things. I'm doing that now for different generations as well, and at a very affordable price, because I've approached sponsors who are now involved, and I pay for all the events through sponsorships, and all the ticket money goes to a local organization here called the Starlight Foundation. They're throughout Canada. I deal with the Montreal office, and they're involved in helping seriously ill children. So I'm able to put on wrestling, provide entertainment, create happy memories for people, and also raise money for seriously ill children.
I love that you're able to do that through a vehicle like pro wrestling and the nostalgia that it's brought to so many people. And you're spreading joy and positivity, all with a good cause. Has there been any moment for you that's just been so heartwarming when helping out in your community?
Well, it's really the thanks I get from the organizations. You know, that means everything. Just a simple thank you, you know, and letting me know how much it meant to their organization, or like Big Brothers, Big Sisters here in the West Island of Montreal. They've been recipients of tickets as well, and they're so happy to receive that. And I see their users and participants at the events, and I see their faces light up when they can take a picture with the championship belt.
That's always a good feeling. Be able to meet your favorite stars, pose for pictures with them. Can't get any better than that. What do you see for you and the promotion in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see Mad Dog Pro Wrestling going?
Well, I wouldn't want to predict anything 5 or 10 years out, but I'd like to take things more on an immediate, near future kind of basis, but more fundraising events, special events as well, and more media coverage and more exposure where we can spread this message.
What is it about giving back to the community that gives you the most joy?
Well, it's knowing what it meant to me when I was a kid. So if I could do the same for other people, I know what they're feeling, and I know the memories and relationships that are formed and bonded through this.
Yeah, you're bringing people together through something that so many people have loved and still enjoy today. And it's an amazing feeling that you're doing this for a special cause. So I am so glad that you're helping and doing something, making that difference, and being able to talk about it with you today. I wish you the best of luck with this, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the good work that you're doing.
Well, I thank you very much. And of course, people can check more of it at maddogprowrestling.com, Mad Dog Pro Wrestling FB on Facebook as well, and follow us, and you'll see firsthand what this is all about.
All right. Well, Andy, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.